When a preoccupied with the size of his hands, the size of his bank account, and the size of the crowds at his public appearances, he probably is trying to overcompensate for something. Or maybe he just likes to hear himself talk, even if it's a lie. Clearly, Donald Trump wants everyone to think that he is large and in charge in every way, even to the point that he compares himself to iconic dead people. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is turning over in his grave, probably asking, why is Donald Trump putting me in the middle of his mess? Here's what Trump said about his crowd size compared to the crowd at Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. Check it out.
I've ever spoken before was that day, and I'll tell you, it's very hard to find a picture of that crowd. You see the picture of a small number of people relatively going to the Capitol, but you never see the picture of the crowd. The biggest crowd I've ever spoken, I've spoken to the biggest crowds. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. And they said he had 1 million people, but I had 25,000 people. But when you look at the exact same picture, and everything's the same because it was the fountains, the whole thing, all the way back to from Lincoln to Washington, and you look at it, and you look at the picture of his crowd, my crowd, we actually had more people. They said I had 25,000, and he had 1 million people, and I'm okay with it because I liked Dr. Martin Luther King.
It's true.
So that's what he had to say. Now, first, Trump was wrong about the numbers. The National Park Service, in fact, tallied that there were 250,000 people at King's speech. There were 53,000 people at Trump's January 6th speech. Number two, that tells me that at some point Trump sat around and took the time to put a photo of his crowd next to a photo of the attendees at Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech to compare sizes. Clearly, Trump has too much time on his little hands. I'm Steffanie Rivers, and you're watching my journal. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. Now, with his criminal caseload, his presidential campaign, and him dodging an alleged assassin's bullet, one would think that Trump would forego the crowd comparisons and focus on more important things, but here we are. He also talks about all the money that he has, but it turns out that Trump doesn't pay his bills. Now, I'm not talking about the money owed to former contractors, employees. He needs to pay those bills too, of course. No, I'm talking about the municipalities that he owes money to for the use of venues and security and parking attendants. All that stuff is not free. People want to and need to and should get paid. It turns out that at least 12 cities and the District of Columbia are still waiting for Trump's campaign to pay them from as far back as 2019 when he ran for re-election. Now, I'm just going to show you the visual of, let's see if I can pull that up, of where these people, the different cities are. These are different cities, and those are the municipalities. And then let me make that the bigger picture so you can read it for yourself. These are the different locations where Trump has had rallies in the past that they claim that they're still owed for those rallies from as far back as 2019. Now, I'm not saying that. That's from the Center for Public Integrity. But Trump stays talking about how he respects law enforcement and loves law and order, but he won't pay the bill for local law enforcement security at his rallies. And again, that's according to the Center for Public Integrity. And I'll make sure to put that information in the link, so in the link in the chat, so that you can get that information and go read it for yourself. If you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. Now, of all the municipalities that Trump owes, the bill comes to more than $841,000. The smallest bill is to Lebanon, Ohio for $16,000. The largest bill is to El Paso, Texas for $569,000. Now, El Paso, that's Beto O'Rourke's territory. Remember, O'Rourke he ran for president in 2019 as well, before we ended up, he was one of the primary people running for president, and he had a rally either on the same day as Trump or the same week as Trump in 2019. And his bill, O'Rourke's bill, was about $21,000, and he paid his bill according to the city of El Paso. So yes, apparently everybody else who is holding national presidential rallies, they pay their bills on time, everybody but Trump. Now, I wonder why the national mainstream media like CNN and Fox allow Trump to go off on tangents about irrelevant stuff like crowd sizes, but they won't ask him about his failure to pay his bills. There was someone recently who took the time to ask Trump about him owing some money, or actually wasn't about him owing some money, but she actually asked him about remember he said that Vice President Kamala Harris had used AI to manufacture her crowd at the airport facility. Remember that? Well, a local journalist, had the nerve and courage and guts, or whatever it takes. Apparently it takes more than just common sense and being a journalist these days. She asked him, what about that? There were people, she said, we've talked to people who were there and they confirmed that the crowd was real. So she did call him to task on that. And I want you to see what he had to say about that. So let's look at what Trump had to say to this young lady.
And you said Harris's crowd sizes were AI and that there weren't people there. There's all kinds of video evidence and people who were there who have proven that false. Can you tell us about why you made that claim?
Well, I can't say what was there, who was there. I can only tell you about ours. We have the biggest crowds ever in the history of politics. We have crowds that nobody's ever seen before, and we continue to have that. We have a level of enthusiasm that nobody's seen before. They want to make America great again. That's what's happening. We're going to make it great again. Right now, we have a failing nation. We're in a failing nation, and become in many ways a third world nation, and we're not going to let that happen. Thank you very much.
So you see what he did there? He pretty much said, well, I can't speak to that, but here's what we're doing. We got the biggest crowds. He just goes back to his patent answer about having the largest crowds ever in the history of politics. Like, really, dude, are we talking about like the world? We talking about in Florida? We talking about like, what are you talking about? He just starts spewing stuff. And so then after he spews what he feels like he needs to say, then he shut down the interview. He blew off his lie. He didn't bother to defend the lie and went right back to talking about crowd size. Why? Because that is his thing. He's weird like that. As a matter of fact, it would seem as if local or a national journalist, if they would have the courage to call him out on some of these things that he's saying, I bet that he would stop having diarrhea of the mouth and would start thinking about things that he says, because it's as if he just says them because he knows that he's not going to be challenged. And that is where he's able to just throw stuff out. And believe it or not, some people don't question what he says, meaning everyday voters. They just take it as the law and as the rule, because nobody seems to be questioning him. So if they had the courage to question him, then he probably would reconsider what it is that he's saying. But you would think 70, whatever, how old he is, man, would do that without having to feel like he's going to be questioned. You would just want to just say the truth, just go off of the truth. But anyway, apparently that's not his thing. So, but must be the secret to getting him to stop and call him out on his BS, and then maybe he will reconsider what it is that he's saying. So if you ever in his company, I think, it would be good to ask him, hey, why would you say these things? Why would you lie? Why would you pass on judgment of and say somebody AI generated a crowd just because the crowd seemed to be bigger than yours? Now that's a problem. So at any rate, that's all I got for you today. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com.